So in order to multiply rational expressions p over q times r over s, we're going to multiply numerators over denominators, right? And then divide any factors that are shared between them. So our first example here, I'm going to multiply numerators 16y times 1 over denominators 3 times x squared. And so 16y times 1 is 16y, and 3 times x squared is 3x squared. And then if there are any factors in the numerator that are also in the denominator, I'm going to divide those. But 16 is just a bunch of 2 factors, and, well, there's no shared factors at all. So that's the simplified product for those rational expressions. For b, I'm going to multiply numerators, and if there's more than one term, lock them up so that those factors don't get misplaced. So 6x plus 6 times 14, and denominators 7 times x squared minus 1. Okay, so in the numerator, I'll put the 14 first, and in the denominator, the 7 first. The coefficient. So now I want to see if I can factor this any further, because I do have parentheses, so I've got more than one term in the numerator there for that factor. So let's see if I can factor out a greatest common factor, and there is a common factor here of 6. So I'm gonna let me write it a different way, times 6, and then divide 6 from those terms to see what remains. So 6x divided by 6 is x, and 6 divided by 6 is 1. Then in the denominator, there's no greatest common factor for this factor x squared minus 1, but there's 2 terms. Their difference, are those perfect squares? Yes, they are. So that means I have 2 factors of x and 1. Because it's a difference of 2 perfect squares, there's one positive and one negative factor. And then that's completely factored. So, well, let's go ahead and see, well, 14 is actually 7 times 2. I want to do that because then I can divide a factor of 7 there. And a factor of x plus 1 there. So what does that leave me? In the numerator, 2 times 6 is 12. And in the denominator, x minus 1. So that's my simplified product of these rational expressions. In order to multiply rational expressions, we're first making sure the numerator and denominator are completely factored, and then cancel any shared factors between them. Proceed to just multiply across once you've finished dividing all of the common factors. So let's use that process to multiply these rational expressions here. There's a lot. Okay, so let's start with numerators. So 4x plus 8 times 3x squared minus 5x minus 2. And then in the denominators, if there's more than one term, lock those up as factors. So 14x minus 7x squared. And 9x squared minus 1. I have a feeling we've got a lot of factoring ahead of us here. So let's look at the numerator first. Our first factor, is there a common factor there? It looks like, yes, 4. Okay, so let me factor out a 4. Divide from those terms, so 4x divided by 4 is x, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. And that's actually as much factoring as we can do because the exponent on this variable is 1. We know it's done. So then let's look at the other factor in the numerator. 3 terms, no common factors, so we're going to have to unfoil this trinomial. We want factors of the first term and last term, and we're going to look for a sum of the middle term. So 3 is prime, 2 is prime, so it's a question of whether I put it here or the other way. So let's see. If this were 6x and 1x, they have different signs. The bigger number is negative because of that sign there. So actually, that's going to work. Okay, put those signs in. Let's take those cross terms for factors. So we have a 3x plus 1 factor and an x minus 2 factor. And that completes the numerator. Whew. Let's look at the denominator then. So, these are they're in the wrong order. What if I change the order? Negative 7x squared plus 14x. Okay. So then I'm going to need a common factor here of negative 7x. So let's factor that out. Divide from those terms. So the first term will be positive x. Second term, that's going to be minus 2. Then that second factor, there's two terms. There's no common factor. But there's a difference. They're different signs, right? And those are perfect squares. So we're going to have two factors of the sum and difference of what's being squared. So for the first term, that's 3x, because 3x times 3x is 9x squared, right? And for 1, that's going to be 1. So those are the factors for that last factor. Whew, everything looks factored, right? Well, let's divide factors then. So we have an x minus 2 we can divide, and a 3x plus 1. And that's it. So to finish simplifying here, I'm just going to multiply. So 4 times x plus 2 in the numerator. And in the denominator, a negative 7x and a 3x plus 1. Then I just want to get rid of the parentheses. To be completely simplified, you must remove parentheses. So 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 2 is 8. Negative 7x times 3x is negative 21x squared. And times 1, that stays the same, negative 7x. So that's going to be my simplified product for the rational expression here.